Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss current affairs of 2nd March 2021. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 7 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So let's get started with our discussion and let us see first article. Title says Chinese cyber attack foiled. So this is statement which is given by our Power Ministry. So this article mainly focusing about this Chinese cyber attack. So this article is important regarding GS paper 3, okay, under science and technology. And you can expect some prelims based questions and also mains based questions regarding this cyber attack. So if you see context here, it mainly says that state sponsored Chinese hacker groups, they targeted various Indian power centers. So this is statement which is given by our Union Power Ministry. So in this regard, Union Power Ministry also said that groups have been thwarted after government cyber agencies they warn about their activities. So this article mainly says that recently our power centers, they are mainly hacked by Chinese backed cyber attacks, okay, cyber groups. If you see some details regarding this article, it mainly says that the New York Times report, mainly based on US cyber security firms, they said that recent attack on Mumbai power outrage that happened in October 2020, so it is a part of coordinated cyber attack by China. So in this context, there is no impact on any functionalities. They are mainly carried on by this power sector corporation. So because there is no threat, okay. So this article also says that after this cyber attack on this power corporation, there is no data breach or no data loss. And now let us see some facts regarding what is a cyber security, what is a cyberspace, what is a cyber attack, and also some important details which will be important for mains point of view especially. So first of all, what is the cyber security? Cyber security means we need to protect our cyberspace, including some critical information infrastructure, mainly from attacks, damages, misuse, and as well as economic espionage. So this is called as cyber security. And if you're talking about this cyberspace, first of all, what all will comes under this cyberspace? So it is a global domain with in information environment which mainly consists of interdependent network of information technology infrastructure that mainly includes internet, telecommunication network, and also some computer systems. So these all will comes under this cyberspace. And if you see what is a cyber attack, so this cyber attack, it is a malicious and deliberate attempt by an individual or any organization want to breach information system of another individual or another entities. So it is comes under this cyber attack. So if you're talking about these types of cyber attacks, so this will be important regarding prelims. You need to know differences between these types of this cyber attack. So I just gave you information regarding types of cyber attack. You need to do some research regarding what is difference between one and another. So first one is malware, second one is phishing, third one is denial of service attacks, man in the maid attacks, SQL injection, that is structural query language, and next one is cross-site scripting, and another one is social engineering. So these are some important types of cyber attacks. And now let us see what are laws related to cyber security which are present in India. So first and foremost here is Information Technology Act of 2000. So this Act, IT Act of 2000, it mainly regulates use of computers, computer systems, computer networks and data, and as well as information in electronic format. And next one is we have National Cyber Policy 2013. So the important aim of this national cyber policy here, it is to create a secure cyber ecosystem. So under this we also came up with this CERT-In. So this CERT-In, it is National Computer Emergency Response Team. So this CERT-In mainly functions as nodal agency for coordination of all cyber security, emergency response, and also even crisis management. And if you see next one, that is NCIIPC. So it mainly stands for National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. So it mainly operating as a nodal agency, and this agency created under Information Technology Act of 2000. An important aim here, it is to secure India's critical information infrastructure, and it is also going to promote some cutting edge research and development cyber security technology in India. So these are laws relating to the cyber security in our India. And if you see what are recent steps which are taken by government. So first one is Cyber Surakshit Bharat Initiative. So this initiative mainly launched in year 2018. An important aim of this initiative here is to spread awareness about cybercrime, and also it helps to build some capacity for safety measure for this CISCC officers. And next one is NCCC, that is National Cyber Security Coordination Center. So important mandate of this center here, it is to scan internet traffic and also communication metadata. And next step taken by government here is Cyber Swachhata Kendra. So under this Cyber Swachhata Kendra, it's mainly introduced for internet users. It helps to clean their computers and devices mainly by wiping out viruses and as well as some malwares. And next one is information regarding education and awareness project. So under this project, training of about 1.14 lakh persons toward 552 institutes, and this project aim here, it is to raise awareness, mainly to provide research, education and training regarding this cyber security. And next one is we need to talk about international cooperation. Mainly to become secure cyber ecosystem, we need some technological upgradation and we need some international cooperation. So in this context, India joined hands with several developed countries, for example, US, Singapore, Japan, etc. So these are some important things that should remember regarding this article. And I hope this is very clear now. Now let us see next article. Title says Guidelines for Attending Kumbh Mela. So this article is important regarding GS paper 1 under Art and Culture. So this article mainly focusing on now Kumbh Mela, it is going to be started in Haridwar. So mainly to attend that Kumbh Mela, and in this COVID-19 times, we need to decrease transmission. So mainly to attend this Kumbh Mela, so every person who want to attend this Kumbh Mela, they need to follow some guidelines. So this article mainly focused on what are guidelines that need to be followed by people who want to attend this Kumbh Mela. So now let us see context and as well as some important details regarding this article, and also we are going to discuss some facts regarding this Kumbh Mela. So if you see context, it mainly says that Uttarakhand government has asked devotees or pilgrims who are intending to attend this Kumbh Mela in Haridwar, so which is going to be started, okay, and this will going to start in next Saturday until April 30. So mainly to take part in this Kumbh Mela, so there is need to follow some precautionary measures regarding this COVID-19. So now let us see what are guidelines that need to be followed to attend this Kumbh Mela. So first and foremost here is Uttarakhand Chief Secretary said that devotees or pilgrims who want to attend this Kumbh Mela, they should follow some standard protocols. Okay, so these standard protocols, they need to be followed for effective managing of this COVID-19, and also to ensure transmission of this virus did not escalate and mortality or morbidity regarding this COVID-19 that to be minimized. Mainly to decrease transmission, they need to follow some guidelines. So under these guidelines, it mainly said that people who are aged above 65 years and children below 10 years of age, persons with comorbidities like diabetes mellitus, hypertension, cardiac failure or cardiac diseases, pulmonary diseases, kidney diseases, or cancer, or a patient who are suffering from cancer or cerebrovascular disorders, and even pregnant women, they are advised not to visit this Kumbh Mela. And next one is visitors who want to attend this Mela, they should produce health certificate in a prescribed format. They need to present negative RT-PCR for COVID-19, and this report should not be older than more than 72 hours. Okay. So these are some guidelines that need to be followed. And now let us see facts regarding this Kumbh Mela. So it is one of the largest peaceful congregation of pilgrims on earth. And in this Kumbh Mela, mainly participants they bath or take a dip in sacred waters. And under this Kumbh Mela mainly comes under UNESCO's representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. And this festival mainly held at Prayagraj, Haridwar, Ujjain and Nasik every 4 years by rotation. So these are some important facts regarding this Kumbh Mela that might be potential blimp statements also. And now let us see next article. Title says food processing revolution needed. So this article mainly focusing on food processing. So this article is important regarding economy, which comes under GS paper 3. And this topic is especially important regarding mains. So now let us see context and as well as some important details regarding this article. And also we are going to see some important facts regarding this food processing industry that will be used when you are writing mains answer. So now let us see context first. Context says that Prime Minister in his speech he mainly focused on it is time to increase all private sector in all areas of agricultural research and also in food processing space here. So in 21st century it is time mainly to increase our agriculture production, and mainly India needs a post-harvest food processing revolution, and we need to focus on value addition after this post-harvest. Mainly to ensure this, we need to increase private sector participation in this food processing industries. So this is context and these are some important details that are mainly given in this article. And if you see some facts, first of all, let us try to understand what is this food processing. What is meaning of this food processing? So food processing means when we are taking any raw material either from agriculture or dairy or animal husbandry, meat or poultry or fishing, they will be transformed through a process in such a way that the original physical properties they undergo change, and that lead to formation of one transformed product. So in this transformed product, it have high commercial value and it is also highly suitable for human consumption and also even animal consumption. So what will be significance whenever we are going for this food processing? So first one is it will create direct and also indirect employment opportunities. First important here is employment generation. And next one is doubling of farmers' income. So whenever there is high demand for this food processing, what happen? There will be increased demand for agriculture produce. So because of this, it will give some more income to farmers because of increase in demand for this food grains that are produced by farmers in market. And next one is it is also helpful mainly to reduce malnutrition. So whenever this raw material which is converted into transformed product, so in this process we can also add some minerals, vitamins, etc. right? So in this way we can go for fortification of this food processing product with multivitamins and as well as minerals, etc. So in this way we can reduce this malnutrition also. And next one is we can reduce food wastage. Okay. So if you see some records according to United Nations, so this United Nations mainly estimates that 40% of production is wasted. So whenever we are going for this food processing, we can decrease food wastage also. And next one is we can curb migration. So why? What is cause of migration? Whenever people in this area they don't find any work here, they needs to go to other places mainly in search of work. So in these areas, whenever we are creating some food processing industries, then what happens? People in this area, they will go for these industries for work. So because of this, we can also decrease migration and migration related some socio-economic outcomes also. And next one is finally we can boost our trade and also we can earn some foreign exchange. And we can also go for crop diversification. And we can finally enhance quality and as well as taste of food. And it mainly brings more choices for people. And finally, it mainly enhances consumer choice. So these are some important significance of this food processing industries. And next one is government initiatives. So first one is our government came up with one important program, that is PM Kisan Sampada Yojana. So this PM Kisan Sampada Yojana mainly focus on supplementing of agriculture. And also important objective here is to modernize processing and as well as to decrease agriculture waste. So it is also one umbrella scheme. There are many sub schemes which comes under this Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana. So some of those schemes include mega food parks, integrated cold chain, value addition, and also preservation capacities, and infrastructure for agro-processing clusters, and scheme for creation of backward and forward linkages in agriculture, and also it will focus on food safety and quality assurance infrastructure, and also focuses on human resources and institutes. Okay, so these are some important schemes which comes under this Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana. And next one is government also came up with FDI, foreign direct investment policy, up to 100% which is allowed in this food processing, and that will comes under automatic route. That means there is no need of taking permission from government. And next one is Agriculture and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority, which mainly comes under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, which mainly focuses on how to improve our exports. So these are mainly some government initiatives which are come up in this agriculture and food processing sector in India. So these are some important things that you should remember regarding this article. And now let us see next article. Title says cold comfort. So central theme of this article mainly says that Pakistan avoided the blacklist, but it should address cross-border terror. So this article mainly focusing on FATF, that is Financial Action Task Force. So recently plenary meeting of this FATF done. So FATF plenary meeting decision made that Pakistan will be remain in the grey list for next 3 months until next plenary meeting that is going to be held. So now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So regarding this FATF basic facts, we discussed number of times. So we are not going to discuss about that FATF basic facts in this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to see what is written in this article, that's it. And this article is important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. And this topic is important from both prelims and also mains point of view. If you see background of this article, recently Paris-based 39-member Financial Action Task Force decided once again to keep Pakistan on country's grey list. And FATF mainly increased monitoring for another 3 months to complete its commitments. So if you see some details regarding this Pakistan grey list, Pakistan removed from this list in year 2015 and put back in this grey list in year 2018. So after putting this Pakistan into grey list, FATF mainly handed a 27 point of action list that need to be followed by Pakistan to be removed from grey list. So recently FATF plenary meeting that held. So in this meeting, FATF president announced that Pakistan had been made significant progress and it had 3 remaining points of 27 point of action. Okay. So in this context, body mainly listed remaining tasks. They include terror financing, terror funding, and as well as implementation of some financial sanctions against terrorist designations mainly by United Nations Security Council. For example, Hafiz Syed and as well as JEM's chief, that is Masood Azhar, etc. here. So in recent report that mainly says that Pakistan lost about $38 billion because of its time on this grey list, that is from 2008 to 2015 and from 2008 to now. So it mainly lost some income of $38 billion. And now if you downgrade this Pakistan into further blacklist, so this will be extreme step which will be taken by FATF here. So whenever Pakistan which is downgraded into blacklist, so it means mainly enhanced sanctions and restrictions as Iran and North Korea they are facing now. So if you're talking about India has only one concern, so it need to address this cross-border terrorism also. So whenever it is given some more time mainly to complete those 3 actions, okay, under this 27 point of action, so Pakistan need to address this cross-border terrorism also. So this is gist of this article. And now let us see next article. Before seeing this article, I want to make a small announcement on this platform. We came up with this current affairs package course. In this course, we are exclusively focusing on current affairs and also we are focusing on mains answer writing practice. So if you ask me what is importance of this current affairs, about 50 to 60% of questions, either it may be prelims or mains or even interview, you can expect questions from these current affairs. Okay, and if you're getting any static based questions, they are also related to this current affairs. So you need to master current affairs, especially to clear this UPSC. And if you're talking about this mains answer writing practice, many aspirants, they mainly ignore about importance of answer writing practice. So one thing I want to say here is, without proper answer writing skills, you cannot clear UPSC for sure. So on day 1 of your preparation, you need to focus on this, how to improve your answer writing skills. And if you're joining this course, we also provide you prelims practice questions on weekly basis along with video solutions. So in this way, this course is highly focusing on exactly what is demand of UPSC. So I want to say one thing. So please try to join this course as soon as possible and don't take this course as a choice, and try to achieve your dream of clearing UPSC. So mainly to understand how this program runs, we also came up with a free trial of this current affairs package. So please enroll to that free trial of current affairs package, and later on you can go for subscription of this full course of current affairs package. So details regarding this free trial, which is given in description box. Don't forget to see that once. And now let's come back and let us see next article. Title says Master and the Roster. So this article mainly focusing on CJI, that is Chief Justice of India. So this Chief Justice of India is commonly called as the Master of the Roster, right? So if you see central theme, it mainly says that the collegium system has failed to keep executive interference at bay. So what is this collegium system? I want to say one important clue regarding this collegium system. So this collegium system mainly regarding appointment of judges. So to understand this collegium system, you need to refer first judge case, second judge case, third judge case, etc. We already had a detailed discussion on that first judge case, second judge case in our polity lectures. So if you want to know full details regarding this collegium system, please go and watch this Lakshmikant series in our playlist. Okay, so we are not going to discuss about this collegium system now. So I want to give a brief idea regarding what is this collegium system. So this collegium system mainly contains some group of members. So they will be finally deciding the names of judges who need to be transferred or who need to be appointed, and these members are mainly recommended to president for appointment. Okay, this collegium system mainly regarding this appointments of judges and transfer of judges in high courts and supreme courts. And now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So this article is important regarding GS paper 2 under polity. And if you see why this collegium system and why is this CJI is in news. So Supreme Court recently laid some proceedings regarding inquiry to a conspiracy to threaten independence of judiciary, that is mainly basis of sexual harassment allegations against former CJI, that is Ranjan Gogoi. So there is one allegations regarding this former CJI, that is Ranjan Gogoi, regarding this sexual harassment allegations. So because of this sexual harassment allegations here, so it is also threatening independence of judiciary, and after 2 years we came up with this proceedings, and finally regarding this proceedings that remained inconclusive. So because of inconclusive proceedings of this Ranjan Gogoi against the sexual harassment, now we need to think about judicial independence and what is interference of executive regarding this proceedings of this CJI. So if you see CJI, he is commonly called as the master of the roster. So this master of roster, he or she mainly enjoys one exclusive discretion. So what is meaning of master of roster? It means there is some exclusive discretion to constitute benches and allocate cases. So there are several benches like 2 judge benches, 3 judge benches, 5 judge benches, till 13 judges benches. We have these benches in our Supreme Court. And regarding these benches, how many benches should be constituted, and as well as which group should be deal with cases, that will be exclusive discretion of the CJI. So because of this exclusion or exclusive discretion of this, the master of roster, it mainly led to some controversy surrounding these proceedings, especially regarding this Ranjan Gogoi. So if you're talking about this former CJI Ranjan Gogoi, he enabled mainly suo motu proceedings despite he has been accused under this sexual harassment case. So he also labeled that the cases, they are as a matter of judicial independence, so I am presiding over it. So though he was accused under one case, he went for suo motu proceedings here. So because of this, now there is a question of judicial independence that comes into picture. Here if you are talking about the CJI office, so CJI office, it is a high stake one, and CJI is sole point of defense of court against this executive interference. So if you're talking about different organs of states, we have executive, legislature and judiciary, and we have mainly following separation of powers. So executive should not interfere in judiciary, judiciary should not interfere in legislative process, etc., right? So but in judiciary we are seeing there is executive interference. So mainly to decrease interference of executive, we came up with collegium system, that is appointment of judiciary or appointment of judges for Supreme Court and as well as High Court here. Though there is collegium system that came into existence, now even though we are seeing executive interference in judiciary, okay. So if you're talking about Supreme Court judgments regarding master of the roster, so first important case here is Ashok Pandey versus Supreme Court of India 2018. So in this three judgments, Supreme Court mainly held that the master of roster, it is CJI's exclusive power. So it means mainly forming judge benches and as well as giving allocation of cases, that is exclusive discretionary power of CJI. So this is mainly given by Supreme Court in Ashok Pandey versus Supreme Court of India 2018. And later on another case that came into picture, that is Shanti Bhushan versus Supreme Court of India 2018. So in this it is a two-judge bench. So this bench mainly rejected plea that the master of the roster should be interpreted as collegium. And in this context, therefore we can say that CJI also have some other powers, not only mastering of roster. We also recommend some appointments to constitutional courts and as well as shared with other senior judges, etc. And the power of this master of the roster is enjoyed without any scrutiny. So in this case also, Supreme Court mainly rejected plea that the master of roster should be interpreted as collegium. And if you're talking about recent Ranjan Gogoi case, he mainly hearing many sensitive cases which gave judgment in favor of government, that is in favor of executive. For example, Ayodhya case, Rafale deal, etc. And in this context, Ranjan Gogoi also used his power mainly to ignore conflict of interest when he presided over proceedings on sexual harassment against him. So in this way, he misused mainly power that is given to this CJI here. So in this context, why there is power which is misused by Ranjan Gogoi? So why? Because there are two important reasons. First one is there is attractive lure of post-retirement jobs which is mainly offered by executive to this person. And next one is privilege of master of the roster, which mainly shows allocation of these cases in an unchecked power. Okay, so this is unchecked power and it is discretionary power that mainly enjoyed by CJI. So because of these two reasons, we are seeing executive interference that is seen in judiciary. So in this context, we need some judicial reforms. So if you are talking about judicial reforms, mainly to address this first problem, we need to go for cooling off period. That means certain period there should be no employment of that retired judge. So this cooling off period, that is between retirement and post-retirement appointments, that should be mandatory. And next one is power of this master of the roster that need to be diversified beyond CJI's exclusive discretion. So it should not be exclusive discretion here. So these are some way forward that can be talked. And now let us see next article. Title says a loan waiver reign and state fiscal capacity drought. So this article mainly focusing on election manifesto. Now let us try to talk about this article. This article is important regarding polity and even economy point of view. So now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So if you see context, it mainly says that Government of Tamil Nadu announced waiver for farm loans from cooperative credit societies. And also now government, it is mainly coming up with inclusion of farm laws and as well farm loans and as well as jewel loans in certain limits. They need to be waived, okay. And even DMK government mainly announced to waive education loans from banks and as well as some loans of self-help groups from cooperative societies, etc. And they are mainly followed by some series of loan waivers for weavers, small traders, interest subvention, subsidized electricity, etc. in their election manifesto. And if you see, recently we also talked that assembly polls that are going to be done in some states. So one of that state here is Tamil Nadu. So because of this, government recently came up with election manifesto, and in this election manifesto they talked about loan waivers for farm loan waivers, education loan waivers, well loan waivers for weavers, small traders, interest subvention, subsidy electricity, etc. So in this context, we need to talk about concerns of this loan waivers. So recently, Tamil Nadu government also came up with this farm loan waiver in year 2016. And because of that loan waiver, that increased or elevated this revenue deficit ratio of that state. And even primary deficit also increased from 0.9% to 1.3% because of this farm loan waiver in year 2016. And if you're talking in this present situation, that is in the post COVID-19 era, so already there is increased revenue deficit of states because there is increased expenditure of the states mainly to maintain health and to provide some subsidized food, everything to people. So because of this, already there is increasing revenue deficit that is mainly faced by states. And next one is, if you're talking about option of revenue for this Tamil Nadu states, so even tax revenues of this Tamil Nadu government, it is not buoyant, mainly to go for this loan waivers now. And next one is, if you want to get some support from central government, so central government also declining some central transfers regarding central taxes and as well as grant in aids. So there is no option of going for this loan waivers. So whenever we are going for this loan waivers, that will increase revenue deficit and as well as primary deficit here. So if you're talking about this revenue deficit which is increasing, so with this higher revenue deficit, it will make some unsustainable debt servicing in near future. So in this context, we need to know some facts regarding what is this primary deficit and what is this revenue deficit. So if you're talking about this primary deficit, it means fiscal deficit minus interest payments, it will comes under this primary deficit. And revenue deficit means revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. So in this context, you need to refer FRBM Act. So I want to give you this homework. Please know some facts regarding this FRBM Act. And now let us see next article. Title says the vital but delicate task of reviving Iran deal. So this article mainly talking about JCPOA, that is Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action here. So this is also called as Iran's nuclear deal. So this article is very important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. So regarding this Iran's nuclear deal, you can expect some prelim statements and as well as you can expect mains question in regarding this Iran's nuclear deal. So this topic is important from both prelims and also mains point of view. Now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So this article mainly focused on how this Iran nuclear deal came into existence. So what are changes that happened in this Iran nuclear deal. Okay. So if you see context, it mainly says that JCPOA, that is Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or Iran nuclear deal, it is a very critical foreign policy challenges for before Biden, which is a new administration in US. So new administration in US mainly coming up with reversing of earlier government policies. So one of the thing here is Iran's nuclear deal, that is Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. So it is one of important challenge for this foreign policy of at present government in USA. So now Biden mainly consistently advocated that return to this JCPOA, mainly provided some Irans to return full compliance to this Iran's nuclear deal. So if you're talking about some details regarding this JCPOA, it is mainly result of prolonged negotiations from 2013 to 2015 between Iran, P5 countries and as well as Germany. So it is also called as P5+1. So if you're talking about former US President, that is Barack Obama, mainly described this JCPOA as one of his great diplomatic success, but he mainly failed to come up with ratification regarding this. Okay, so if you're talking about this JCPOA, Iran was then estimated to be months away from accumulating enough enriched uranium mainly to produce one nuclear device. So with this signing of this JCPOA, mainly obliged Iran to accept constraints on its enrichment of uranium. In return, there is partial lifting of economic sanctions. So in that context, Mr. Obama was unable to get this nuclear deal ratified, but he mainly implemented on basis of periodic executive orders. So because of this, mainly after this Barack Obama, Trump came into administration. So during this Trump administration, he said that this deal is one-sided deal, and finally he pulled back out of this Iran's nuclear deal. So after pulling out of this Iran's nuclear deal, Trump increased sanctions on this Iran, and that led to increased pressure on this Iran's government. So because of this, Iran mainly began to move away from this JCPOA constraint. And if you're talking about this JCPOA constraint, under this JCPOA, so Iran need to maintain not more than 300 kgs of low enriched uranium and 130 MT of heavy water here. So because of increased pressure and increased sanctions on Iran, so Iran mainly raised its enrichment levels from 3.67% to 4.5% by May 2019, and it also went for setting up of some research development on advanced centrifuge, and as well as it resumed enrichment at Fordo. Fordo, it is one of a nuclear site which is present in Iran. So finally it led to violation of limits of nuclear on centrifuge in Iran here. So later on in January 2020, what happened? There was one incident that happened. So drone strike on Islamic Revolutionary Guard, okay, corps commander. Name of that commander here is General Qasim Soleimani. So in this context, Iran mainly announced that it would no longer observe this JCPOA restraints. That led to increase in tensions between USA and Iran, and finally USA that is coming up with increasing sanctions on this Iran. US imposed nearly 80 rounds of sanctions, which are mainly targeting about close to 1500 individuals and entities in Iran. So later on COVID-19 came into picture. So because of this COVID-19, it affected Iran badly. So because of this COVID-19, that led to economic contraction of 7% by 2019 and another 6% by 2020 in Iran. So in last November, so one senior nuclear scientist who is to work in Iran's defense ministry, he was killed outside Tehran in terrorist attack here. So because of this, recently Iran's parliament passed a bill mainly to seeking enrichment to be raised to 20%. Even IAEA report mainly confirmed that there is 20% of enrichment had begun in Iran. So in this context, what is needed? What can be done? So first one is Biden administration. He mainly come up with a good start. He appointed one person, Robert Malley. So mainly they are hoping to get some positive steps along multiple tracks. They are necessary for creating some conducive environment between USA and Iran. And next one is Iran also do something here. Iran can release some European and American nationals who are currently in custody of Iran. That would help to improve relationship. And next one is here we can go for clearing of Iran's application to IMF for COVID-19 funds. And next one is there is a need of supply of vaccines under this international COVAX facility to Iran. And we can go for reversal of this US sanctions on Iran, but that cannot be done immediately, but it can be done gradually one by one. So these are some important way forward which is mainly suggested in this article. I hope this article it is very clear now. Now let us see mains question. Critically analyze the role and effectiveness of FATF in combating the financing of terrorism. So this question is very important, and you can expect these types of question in your GS paper too. So finally try to write this answer. By this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. Okay, and don't forget to see free trial of this current affairs package. Thank you so much.